explain that I don't mean to be rude and pointing my feet at everyone. It's just that my ankles swell and I need to put them up. Okay? Would you back up a little bit, Love, so I can see what you Okay. Good to see you. So does anyone have anything going on that you would like to address or have addressed as we're here together in this company? Anything you'd like to share or any questions?
Over here, Ramana.
I'm sorry? Okay.
May I continue? Okay. So my question was then, is it okay for me to adopt the Aham principles, but also respect my background and the religion, and
No problem at all.
and then mix the two, blend the two, and then use?
Aham's teaching can be blended. I don't mean to, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry.
Aham's teaching can be utilized with any philosophy, any religion, with no conflict whatsoever.
Okay.
That's a fact, okay? None whatsoever. Now, you will find it to blend it very easily. We support, we do not look for differences. We acknowledge and respect the sameness of all basic and major religions. And there is just no conflict at all. It would be like, let's just say as an example, that something was going on with your body, and you had to go to the doctor. You just go to the doctor, and the doctor treats you for whatever is wrong with your body. It doesn't matter what religion you are, as far as the medical doctor is concerned. Now there are, of course, methods of medicine that are from different religions, but if you went to a allopath, a regular doctor, it wouldn't make any difference what religion you are, if you get what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So it's the same way with Aham. Our teaching addresses one's being, not one's beliefs. So it has nothing to do with beliefs, it has to do with being. And it has to do with direct insight and understanding and pure knowing that happens within you.
Okay.
And we just guide you and help you to find for yourself within you what actually is going on, that anyone can find for themselves regardless of their religious background or no religious background. Even an atheist or an agnostic
Yeah.
can follow our teaching very easily. Okay.
Thank you very much for clearing that for us.
All right.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ramana, you said it's very beneficial to follow this method.
Yes.
So, who gets benefited?
You.
When you say you, is it the me that thinks that the body is me, or like you said before, is it the one who sees that body is just a possession and here is the real me?
until you awaken fully and abide in the pure awareness of the being that you are, the I you think you are all along the way will benefit. And when you finally awaken to the pure being that you are, you will have benefited and see the full benefit that you will gain from this teaching. So when I say you, I mean either both the you that you think you are, the I you think you are, as well as the pure being of the self that you actually are. No different. Okay? Our teaching is universal in nature, absolutely and totally. Practical, functional, highly beneficial. Those of you who have been involved in it in any degree, would you agree with it?
Yes.
All right, anyone else? Aham, as I was saying inside in the sanctuary, is a Sanskrit word, and it means I. It means the principle of consciousness or life in the body. You could say it's the ego, or you could say it's the self. But it's comprised, the word is comprised of the first and last letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. Thus, therefore, it means, it implies the totality of being, everything, universality. So when one follows the sense of I to the source, it will awaken one to the totality of being. Now, aham, spelled in all capital letters, is also an acronym for the Association of Happiness for All Mankind. That's the name of our institution, our organization, and we are in America, we are chartered as a nonprofit spiritual education association, and also here in India as well. So we present the teaching, as I've said earlier, of Bhagavan Ramana simply because Bhagavan Ramana was not religious by intention. He was open and receptive to all religions, to everyone, as well as to those who had no religion at all. And the practicality of his teaching is just as I've been sharing, it's just so simple. We follow the sense of I back to the source out of which it rises, and then awaken to. By doing this, we awaken to the pure being of the self, pure consciousness, the I am awareness, the heart, the core of being itself that we all are. Now, when this awakening happens, we come to realize the truth that has been shared by all of the major religions and the founders of those religions who had awakened themselves to the same truth, to the same realization. And what that is, get that fly. What that is there is only one awareness, universal awareness, like one ocean, and that one universal awareness is expressing as each one of us. The fact is, once awakening is finalized and complete and total, one sees that the self we think we are is not the self we really are. That we're in truth we are this universal awareness that is living through us or as us. Call it God, call it the Supreme Being, call it infinite intelligence, call it divine wisdom, call it whatever you wish to call it. It doesn't make any difference. As some poet once said, a rose by any other name smells just as sweet. Doesn't matter. And when we come to know that this ocean of consciousness is expressing like the waves of individual identity, we see that even though we think that we're individuals, we really are expressions of the one universal awareness. And when this is awakened to and seen, the quality of the state of that is pure love. That's where love is. Until then, we may be looking for love in the world of persons, places, and things, and we may find it temporarily in the form of our special relationships with people, with someone. But that love is not very dependable. But the love of our own being, when we awaken to it as our nature, is dependable. Does anyone get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Okay? In fact, there's a song. You know it, Martin.
Yeah.
Sing it to us.
Looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm just interested to know that when you yourself discovered the awareness and how it changed your outlook as a person to daily life.
In daily life, how it changes you? Well, it could possibly not change you at all, other than having more of a fullness of insight. You see? A clarity and of certainty, a sense of security and confidence, the presence of compassion, love, freedom, peace. But these qualities that now that you're able to recognize as being natural to your being, you now are able to bring these into full manifestation, full expression and manifestation into your life and affairs and relationships. So over and all, it would make what your friends or people around you might consider a better person. Okay, and maybe you would consider that too. Okay. It could very well happen to some people that it would occur in a spontaneous moment that awakening happens, and maybe the people around them may not even notice that it has happened, but they will know that there's a difference because the perspective from which they see things is not so much from the body mind or the waking state per se, but rather is from the awareness that is present prior to the body and prior to the mind. And so that presence of pure awareness will be what one is living and expressing, and this efficiency and effectiveness of being will be known to oneself, but may not necessarily be that noticeable by the people around. It could be, and might be, in the sense of perhaps more efficiency, more alertness, more presence, more, in that regard, but it might very well happen that there's nothing really unusual that has happened when the awakening is occurring and is complete. In other words, you're not necessarily mystical or far out or far off. You're just very, very ordinary. You might say, I'm kind of ordinary. Well, I live in the awareness of being. Now, maybe people don't think I'm so ordinary.
I wouldn't say ordinary. Not an adjective for you. Wouldn't you also say that your experience is the cessation of thoughts and the experience of the moment present without the mind moving into the past and the future, and that one's responses to the moment are appropriate?
Yes. Yes, all of that. Free of random thoughts going on in the mind when you're quiet. No worries, no concerns, no fears. Also, no desires, for there is a quality of fulfillment, completion. That doesn't mean that you're not capable of functioning and producing and creating if something comes up, or if you are involved with someone in some endeavor. Your creativity can be enhanced, but it doesn't mean there's a compulsiveness about it. You're free. glass water.
No, it's
Oh, you're just chewing them all. Huh?
chewing them
I was expecting to get swatted.
out. No.
No more. Huh? Okay.
Okay, Paul has another question.
All right.
Going back to what you were talking about earlier, about first there's the body, and the body must have consciousness, and then there can be thoughts.
And then, I'm sorry.
Then there can be a thought. Then you can pick up a thought after. The body must be conscious to pick up a thought. Yesterday I was at Ganeshan Satsang, and he talked about no mind. So, so if we go back to what you said, so the body has to be conscious to have a thought. But if you have no mind, then is it just the understanding of the conscious is?
Well, you see, consciousness expresses in time and space as mind. When you are living in the body, in time and space, it is consciousness that is supporting the mind itself. But when you withdraw the mind back into the state of pure being, into consciousness itself, pure consciousness, what we normally call mind is all of the patterns of conditioning, the history, you see, of your entire life,
Yeah.
all of the memories, you see, that's what mind is.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Are you with that? But you still can have that, but you're no longer at the effect of all of that. It's there for your benefit, but now it's not ruling you. You see, in the present moment, if someone says something to you that is contrary to your likes and your dislikes, you might get a little upset about it. You understand what I'm saying? You might even get angry, and ultimately, if you hold on to that anger long enough and don't have a way of dissipating it or neutralizing it, it could turn into resentment. You understand what I'm saying? But if you're abiding in the pure awareness of being, and you withdraw that thought that otherwise is an upsetting thought back into the pure awareness of being, and you stay in the pure awareness, you can see what is going on in the mind, observe what is going on in the mind, but you're not at the effect of what's going on in the mind. You're clear and free about it. You can choose, if you wish to identify with it, but you don't have to unless you want to. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's very beneficial. Yes.
Do you offer any guidance to ensure that we are really perceiving the I properly?
Yes. Yes, we do. In our teaching, in fact, we're the only one in the country, in the world, that does in this teaching. Your name is Paul, is it not?
Mine is Paul.
Well, he was mentioning it being at Ganeshan's yesterday. Ganeshan is a very dear friend, and is the grand nephew Bhagavan Ramana. And Ganeshan, who used to be, for 35 years, was the manager of Ramana Ashram. And for 25 of those years was the managing editor of the magazine, A Mountain Path, that is published by the ashram. Well, of all people who knows about Bhagavan and his teaching, Ganesha knows where in the world there are centers of influence of people who are really involved in Bhagavan's teaching, where they are and pretty much what they are into, what they offer and what they present. And he readily states, we are the only institution in the world that presents Sri Bhagavan's teaching in its purity. And not only that, we do stay with a new student for a minimum of 6 weeks immediately after one of our programs, our entry-level teaching, where you learn the intensive self-inquiry training. And then there's, in our curriculum, we have 4 or 5 programs, and like after each one of them, you have a home study portion that goes with it, so that you have a graduate, an advanced graduate who's with you. We call them a buddy, your buddy that stays with you during that period of time. And then, after that, if you're really interested in taking the teaching all the way through to absolute and radical completion, realization, then we have what we call a sponsorship program that is involved within our teaching. This is just all by selection, by choice, if you wish, and you can have a sponsor. And a sponsor will be assigned to you and be with you for the rest of your life, if need be, to make sure that you are remaining. And then together, you're like a buddy or team, and you kind of support one another in making sure you're continuing to abide by and live the teaching. So we have support all the way from the beginning all the way to completion. And we're the only one who does. Okay?
Ramana,
Joe?
what's the difference between somebody who is awakened and somebody who has come to completion? Or what are signs that show that somebody has come to completion?
It has to do with how steady and relaxed one is. When you're in completion, there's no longer the mind that is itself active and in charge. When you're awakened, you may still have the mind that is active and could still, even to a certain degree, be in charge. But when you're complete, you no longer have the mind that is active and in charge. You have the use of the mind. The mind is available for your use, but it's not in charge. You're in charge.
So are there certain individuals who, from the moment of their awakening, are complete, have completion, or is it like most people that it takes years of deepening your experience and your insights?
Well, initially in awakening, you will see, if you come into full awakening and you are in conscious relationship with one who is fully awake, you will see for yourself that in fact there is no an individual that has anything that he or she has to do. But that doesn't mean that that sense of awareness of lack of individuality or lack of being a separate entity goes away immediately. The habit is very strong that you are an individual living in time and space. That's a strong habit. When it is complete, then you recognize that you have always been only the pure awareness that has been living you rather than you living you. It is living you, you are it, and it is it. And that's the pure being of the self. And so in that pure awakening, final awakening, you recognize that there is no one that has to do anything. Okay?
I've heard other teachers use the term crystallization with the awakening. So once the awakening has been crystallized within oneself, then it can't be taken away.
Well, I would say if they're using that term, it's just some kind of a metaphor.
Right.
A stabilizing or permanent, maybe if that's what you're meaning.
That's the meaning
by
of
the
it,
term.
yeah.
Okay, yes, and that does occur. But there is no crystallization in the form of being stuck in a form.
Correct.
Because you're actually in the formless awareness of being, not in a form.
Right.
Okay?
You mentioned that once you are aware, you let go of desires.
I'm sorry, when
You
you're
let-
aware,
You let go of desires once you're
well,
aware.
they fall away.
They fall away.
It's not a you to let them go, they just fall away.
They just fall away.
Yeah.
Is it okay to be aware, but at the same time be ambitious to be successful in life?
Well, when you're awake, when the awakening happens as to what you are and who you are, you see there is no individual that is or is not ambitious. There is no individual. So there is no individual to be ambitious. Ambitious would imply that there's something more to have that you don't presently have. Right? Well, if you're already aware that you have available, that you are complete as you are, that you're fulfilled as you are, there would be no I that rises up to feel separate from and apart from what you might consider yourself to be ambitious about. There would be no ambition. There would be fulfillment. It's just like if you have just now sat down and had a wonderful meal that is very fulfilling, and then someone comes along and offers you a sandwich, you think you're going to want it?
Ramana, it seems to me that the gist of Paul's question was, what about accomplishment? You know, the ability to accomplish once one has the awakening. And I think, of course I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think that he's associating the presence of ambition in the personality to the possibility of accomplishment, right? So making something out of your life, doing something, right? Right. Now, so I would think that it might be important to say that accomplishment is still very much a possibility in life, just without a feeling of lack that is characteristic of ambition.
Right.
If it's one's karma to accomplish, to do certain things, that happens.
Yes, I might. That's correct, and I might add to that. When we're thinking in the area of, when you're saying ambition to accomplish, to attain, to achieve, maybe to change or to improve, that motivation factor that seems to direct one's life, and in some cases, in some people, we might even use the word kind of drive one and cause one this strong motivation. Are you with me? But when you awaken, you look and see where all of that was coming from was not from the individual to begin with. It's not that you're losing your ability to attain. You were never the one who was attaining anything to begin with. All along you thought that you were the one that was attaining. It was the very self that was living you who was the one who was attaining. There was no individual who attained anything. Now, someone say, well, that leaves me in a state of nowhere to go and nothing to do. Well, who was it that was going anywhere or doing anything all along?
That scares me.
I'm sorry?
That scares me.
That scares him.
That scares you? To who's afraid? That in itself is the mind. Right?
Yeah.
But now, do you have a mind or are you your mind?
I have a mind.
Well, then it's the mind that's afraid.
Yeah.
You're not afraid. You're not afraid unless you identify with your mind.
Totally true. Yeah.
So there's no reason for fear. There is no fear without the thought of fear, right?
Correct.
So if you're not thinking of fear, what are you afraid of? Exactly. Then you're already free.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. You see, what's important is being conscious. It's recognizing what's really so, what's really going on, rather than our concepts about what we think is going on. Because sometimes we're holding concepts which are the mind, and the mind don't always know, you see. For example, the thought of a thing is not the thing when you're coming from consciousness. The thing is the thing. The thought of water is not water. Water is water. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So in exactly the same way, when you awaken to the pure being of the self, you're living already in freedom. So there's nothing to be afraid of. You already are the totality of being. You're just expressing as the apparent individual that you before have been taking yourself to be. You've been living in limitation. Now, would you rather live in limitation or in infinite awareness?
Infinite awareness.
Yes, of course.
Ramana? Why is that not automatic? See, we seem to automatically connect the sense of I with the mind. When we are particularly conscious, then we get a sense of disassociating from the mind and the I, right? We can take a stand consciously, and then there also dawns a sense of calmness. But that's not automatic. Whereas
Not
that's not automatic. That's not
automatic?
Whereas this attachment of the sense of I with the mind seems to be automatic. That seems to be always there, and you have to really sit back and then apply particular conscious thought to look at what's going on. Only then you feel better. So why is the disassociation not automatic?
because of the nature of the mind itself. The mind itself, you might call it, Bhagavan calls the mind, as a good analogy, is a treacherous friend. It pretends to be your friend, but it will throw you down the first chance it gets. So the nature of the mind, its function and its purpose is to survive the being, to maintain the survival of the being, the body-mind itself, or the being, the entity that you're taking yourself to be. That's the function of the mind. And it, in its process, happens to be omniscient and omnipotent minus one. In other words, it has all the power and all of the knowledge and all of the presence minus one. That minus one factor happens to be the self, which is more powerful and more inclusive than it. The mind cannot encompass the self. The self is prior to the mind and is that out of which the mind rises. So the nature of the mind is, once you have given it the control and allowed it to have control out of habit now, that has happened. And so it wants to remain in control. It's like the mind has a will of its own. It has a purpose of its own. Now its purpose is to survive the being that you think you are. Now when you come to the point of taking the mind to be who you think you are, then what would you imagine the purpose of the mind then is going to be? What would you say?
It still protect itself.
Exactly. It's going to protect itself. It's going to maintain its own survival. And then it will do anything to maintain its own survival. Do you see? Okay. So that's where you have to have a process that can transcend the mind, which is what inquiry does. Inquiry is the direct and immediate way to transcend the mind into the pure awareness of being, where now you are as being in the driver's seat rather than your mind be in the driver's seat. Okay?
Ramana, to use another analogy, right? So when I set off on the road driving, right, on some days, then I kind of take a stance that I'm going to drive, in a calm manner. I'm not going to shout at the guy who cuts you in traffic.
Would you, did you hear what he was saying? Because I'm not.
He's using an analogy. So he starts out on a trip and he makes an intention that he's not going to yell at the guy that cuts him off in traffic.
Okay.
And that day, the drive is really smooth. I'm already taking a stance, right, that I'm going to be calm and I'm not going to react to anything that happens in traffic.
All right.
So similarly, can I start the day with the stance that I will not get attached to the mind, right? So, and then live every day like that.
Well, you can try. Yeah, you can try. It's not very likely that you will succeed.
So what's the problem? I mean, how is
I've
this
just
different
described
from
it.
the?
I've already described that one to you. The mind is going to take control, and it has a mind of its own. It has a will of its own. It comes up out of the past, and it chooses what it wants to do in the moment. If someone cuts you off in the traffic and you inclined in the past to get pissed off, then you're going to get pissed off. You see? You can't just say, oh, I'm not going to do this today, what I've been doing before. That's
Yeah,
not the
these
way
things
it works.
Mind trick.
The mind will have its own will. It does what it wants to do based upon the habits of the way you've always done something.
Ramana, in making that statement, I'm not going to do something, isn't that taking a position, and so the opposition is going to automatically come up?
Exactly. Exactly.
Finding.
Ramana. So when we inquire, we're not providing any opposition to the mind at all. We're just withdrawing it back into its source. So it just goes
Yeah.
along happy doing what it feels like doing.
Yes, that's true, and there's going to be still a quality of opposition to even doing the inquiry once the mind begins to recognize exactly what it is that you're doing.
It's,
So you still have to have resolve, dedication, and perseverance, even in the process of inquiry. But even with that, inquiry is the most direct and immediate way to transcend the mind. You're not going to win.
make wind, Vivian.
Yeah, waves, make waves.
Make wind.
Yeah, right. That's the. So used to. Yeah.
Yes.
Going on what he just mentioned, taking a stance. What is the correct way to do then? Is it to meditate in the morning? What would you suggest? What would a correct solution be?
Yes, very, very much so. Establishing yourself a pattern and structure for living your life in order to maintain a steadiness of course and direction for your life. This is one of the things we teach in our home. A morning meditation, to start your morning with meditation. Now, as you grow, as you develop, in the beginning, whatever you feel that you're capable of doing, okay? The longer, the better, okay? And as you gain your own strength and ability to do that, even increasing it. Here, we meditate for an hour and a half every morning. And that's every morning. Okay. And in this meditation, it's inquiry. The meditation that we teach is the inquiry itself, where you are taking a hold of the sense of I and following the sense of I back into the sourcing awareness out of which the sense of I rises. And then you just remain poised or plunge into that awareness, into this awareness, into this pure being, which is presence, just pure presence, just pure nowness, isness, I amness, still, steady, quiet, no movement of the mind. And then the longer you can stay poised in this pure awareness, you'll begin to gain strength, and we call it developing your attention muscle. Just like you were doing exercise, with your body to develop your muscle. Developing your attention muscle, your ability to maintain your attention, really here,
Okay.
not here, here. In the yogic system, it starts at the ear, goes all the way up to your head, but then it comes back into the heart. The source of consciousness is not in the head, it's in the heart. For example, when you point to me, would you? Right now, point to me. All right, now point to yourself. Look where you pointed. I didn't tell you to point there, I just said point to yourself. You see you automatically went to here?
Yeah.
Well, that's the source of consciousness, not here.
Yeah.
If the source of consciousness was here, you would have pointed to here. Bhagavan Ramana says, if a little boy, if a boy says, would you like for me to run and get the book for you? He does not point to his legs that does the running. He said, or if he says to, do you want me to do the sum for you in arithmetic and add the sum for you? He doesn't point to his head that does the sum, that does the thinking. He points to himself. And we all do that, see? An intuitive indication that the source of consciousness is always here in the heart. So we meditate on the heart, but you just meditate on the sense of I and follow the sense of I back, and eventually you will see for yourself that this is the location. It's not that you locate it intentionally there. It will draw you there, and you'll see for yourself. So spending time in morning meditation, and then we also, in our teaching, recommend what we call heart times, which are 6:45 to 7, 10:45 to 11, and 2:45 to 3, then 6:45 and 10, right around the clock. For 15 minutes every 4 hours, you just remember to recognize, and bring your attention back into the awareness. Okay? Looks like we've just about run out of time. It's been good to have everyone, to be with everyone. It's good being you, huh? Namaste. You're all welcome to return on Tuesday.